Okay, here we go. I am actually outside for this one because I wanted a nice view. And the sun just came out, so this is pretty. So anyway, I hope I'm talking loud enough. And I hope the camera doesn't have me looking like hair in my mouth. Fish-eyed lens. Okay, today's lesson is about a term I hear a lot. It goes his self, which is incorrect. And it makes sense though that people would say that. I could see how they would get it wrong because there's, his and hers, there's herself, and then so naturally you might assume it would be his self, but it's not. It's actually himself. So we don't say his self, we say, whoa, oh, that was scary. We should say, I'm leaving that in there too. We should say himself. And the only time you want to really find the words his self coming out of your mouth, checking my hair, of course, the only time you'd really ever want to use the term or the phrase his self would be if you're speaking about his self-esteem, his self-involvement, or, if you're following it up with some word or term like that. But if you're saying, for example, he did that to his self, that's wrong. You want to say he did that to himself, just like you would say she did that to herself. So that's the lesson for today. I hear that a lot, and in fact, there was some TLC song, I was trying to remember which one it was. I remember they said his self in there. And like I said, again, it's nothing really necessarily wrong with speaking Ebonics or, slang or incorrect English as long as we know the right way to speak it and then choose differently if we want to. But I heard that phrase his self in a popular TLC song, and I thought to myself, I wonder if they do know the right way to say it, or, I just hate the sad fact is when you hear that term and it's being perpetuated, and people think that's the right way to say things. Well, that's not true. So maybe I should end there. I don't know. I kind of want to move into also, if you're speaking about saying himself in place of his self, which is incorrect, himself is correct, his self is incorrect, then of course I had to start thinking further and a little bit researching themselves or, other terms related to, that whole phrase. And I'll admit, some I had an issue with. I had to research it myself. Let me grab my iPad. I actually looked it up because I had a question about certain things. I know myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself is correct. I know those terms, but I know his self is wrong. The other phrase that I wasn't sure about, well, the one I know is wrong also is they self. You might hear that not as often as his self, but some people might say they self, and that's not true. It should be, themselves. Another one that was a little bit on the fence was themself, which some places say is definitely incorrect because you have a them, then it should not be a singular self, but it should be themselves. Our self, they say, is wrong. Themself is wrong. Their self is wrong. And their selves is also wrong. So, it gets dicey. It gets interesting. But the main one I wanted to focus on, the main one I hear pretty often, is his self. So his self is wrong. Himself is correct. The only time it would be right is if you're saying his self-confidence, his lack of self-esteem, his self-acceptance. Other than that, we're not saying he did that himself. Always say himself instead. A little confusing English language. They have quirks like that, but